Have you ever heard silence at 36,000 feet? Not the kind you find in a library. Not the peace before sleep silence. I'm talking about the kind that hits you right in the chest, when the engines cut, the lights flicker, and time suddenly forgets how to move. That's what it felt like when the plane dropped. And in that split second of nothingness, no sound, no direction, one name broke through the chaos like a flare in the dark. Malik Carter. Row 17. Cockpit. Now. Most people didn't notice. They were too busy screaming, praying, texting final goodbyes. But he heard it. And somehow, so did his 7-year-old son sitting next to him, clutching a threadbare stuffed lion like it was armor. Malik didn't look like a pilot. Not that day. He wore a faded bomber jacket, jeans worn soft by time, boots that had seen more sidewalks than runways. A black single father just trying to get his son to a heart specialist in Seattle. Not a hero. Not a headline. But sometimes, the sky doesn't care what you used to be. It just asks what you're willing to become. So when that voice called his name, Malik stood. Not with swagger. Not with fear. But with that heavy kind of calm you only see in people who've already lived through fire. Who've already lost everything once and know exactly what's worth saving. He kissed his son's forehead. Whispered, "Draw me a picture, champ. I'll be back before you finish." And then he walked down the aisle, one trembling step after another, toward a cockpit swallowed by chaos, toward the controls of a jet sliding into freefall, toward 153 souls praying for something, someone, anything to stop the fall. This is not a story about flying. It's about falling, and what you choose to do before you hit the ground. So buckle up. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a landing. It's a return. And not just to Earth, but to purpose. Before the flight. Before the fall. Malik Carter was just a man trying to keep the wheels turning on a life that barely stayed in motion. 40 years old. Broad-shouldered, quietly built like someone who once trained hard and never unlearned the discipline. His face carried the kind of quiet that comes from holding in too much for too long. Not angry. Not broken. Just weathered. Malik lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on the south edge of Atlanta. The kind of place where the walls were thin, but the memories were thick. A faded photo of his son's first steps sat on a shelf made from repurposed plywood. His fridge had more sticky notes than food. Doctor's appointments, payment reminders, a faded drawing of a stick figure with "Super Dad" written in crayon. His world revolved around one person. Noah. Noah was 7. A sweet, bright-eyed kid with a smile that could melt steel, and a heart that couldn't keep time. Born with a rare congenital defect, his condition meant frequent checkups, daily meds, and the looming shadow of heart failure. But you'd never guess it by the way he told knock-knock jokes in waiting rooms or how he named every cloud shape from the back seat of Malik's old Ford. Malik worked night shifts as a delivery driver, everything from pizza to plasma, just to keep the lights on and the insurance barely paid. He used to fly. 10 years ago, he was a C-17 instructor pilot with the U.S. Air Force. Flew combat missions, night ops, medevac runs in places that never made the news. Then came the crash. A mechanical failure in Syria. 6 men lost. Malik survived, but something inside him didn't. He walked away from flying. From the Air Force. From the skies that once felt like home. Some people called it guilt. Others called it grief. Malik never gave it a name. He just knew he couldn't face the clouds anymore, not until Noah gave him a reason to try. And when the specialists in Seattle called with an opening, one slim shot at a long shot treatment, Malik bought the cheapest commercial flight he could find. Seat 17A. Just a number. Just another trip. Until the sky called him by name. Again. Across the aisle in seat 17C sat Charlotte Jameson. Polished. Composed. Untouchable. She wore a tailored gray blazer that probably cost more than Malik's rent, paired with white sneakers that screamed, "I'm casual," in the way only high-powered executives could afford to be. Her dark brown hair was tucked into a no-nonsense bun, and the glint of a platinum watch peeked from her cuff every time she adjusted her tablet. though she hadn't touched the screen once since boarding. Charlotte was the kind of woman who made people sit straighter when she entered a room, even when she didn't say a word. But today, she wasn't on this flight as a CEO. She wasn't Charlotte Jameson, the youngest female founder of a tech company that designed AI-assisted flight control systems. Today, she was just Emily Jordan, the alias she used when she needed to disappear. 3 weeks ago, one of her company's drones had gone off course during a government training exercise, clipping the wing of a private aircraft during descent. No fatalities, but enough to trigger investigations, lawsuits, and media storms. She hadn't slept properly in days. And now, her entire company, the legacy she'd built from scratch, was sitting on a knife's edge. She wasn't running away. At least, that's what she told herself. She was flying to San Francisco for damage control, but the truth was, Charlotte didn't know who she was trying to protect anymore, her company or herself. She noticed Malik when he first boarded. Not because of how he looked, but because of how he moved. Cautious. Heavy. Like every step carried a burden he couldn't set down. She caught glimpses of his son, Noah, and the way he leaned into his dad like he was the only anchor in a shaky world. Charlotte didn't do kids. She didn't do vulnerability. But something about that boy's soft voice, the way he whispered to his father about drawing clouds, cracked something she didn't know was still inside her. And then there was Tina, the lead flight attendant. Sharp eyes, quick movements, and a voice that could soothe or slice depending on the need. She'd worked commercial for years but had once flown medevac in the military. She noticed Malik too. She just didn't realize, yet, that they'd flown together before. But soon, all of them, Charlotte, Tina, Malik, and a plane full of strangers, would find out that destiny has a funny way of seating you exactly where you're needed most. It started with a sound. Barely a whisper. Like the sky exhaling. At first, no one noticed. Just a soft groan in the frame, the kind of mechanical hum passengers chalk up to turbulence or an old airframe stretching its bones. But Malik's eyes snapped open. Pilots know. There's a difference between routine noise and something not right. He shifted in his seat, instinct taking over before logic had time to argue. His hand moved across Noah's back, calm and steady, like a reflex. The boy had drifted off, lips slightly parted, that little lion clutched to his chest. Malik didn't want to wake him, not yet. He glanced toward the window. The cloud line looked peaceful. But peace at 36,000 feet could be deceiving. He watched the wing tip and waited. Then it happened again. A jolt. Slight but unnatural. A kind of vertical dip followed by a sluggish recovery. The overhead lights flickered for half a second. This time, more people noticed. A low murmur rose in the cabin like a wave beginning to curl. Phones shifted in hands. Brows furrowed. The fasten seatbelt sign pinged back on with a hard chime. Charlotte looked up from her still dark tablet. Her posture stiffened. She had flown enough to recognize the rhythm of flight, and this wasn't it. In row 15, someone rang the call button. Tina appeared instantly, her calm face the kind that's trained to stay calm even when her gut is screaming otherwise. Malik caught her eye as she passed. Just a glance. But something passed between them. Recognition. Not of each other, but of the moment. The third jolt was sharper. The plane dropped maybe a few hundred feet in under 2 seconds. Drinks spilled. Gasps escaped. A baby started crying. Noah stirred. "Dad," he whispered. Malik pulled him closer, forehead to forehead. "It's okay," he said softly. "The plane's just stretching its legs." But his jaw was tight. His eyes scanned the cabin. He wasn't looking for exits. He was doing math. Wind speed. Altitude. Descent rate. And that's when the right engine whined, sputtered, and died. No explosion. No drama. Just a long silence louder than any scream. Malik closed his eyes. This wasn't turbulence anymore. It was the beginning. The cabin tilted. Not sharply. Not violently. just enough to feel wrong. The left wing dipped, then corrected. The engine on the right side no longer hummed, it hissed. A long, breathy mechanical exhale that ended in eerie silence. And then came the second silence. The kind that steals breath. That's when the lights dimmed. A few overheads flickered out completely. The screens on the seatbacks went black, one by one. Phones lit up, gripped tighter. A baby's cry became a chorus. Luggage bins rattled overhead. The captain's voice broke through the intercom, calm but strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a temporary technical malfunction. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We're evaluating the situation." The sentence cut out. Mid-word. The speakers fell dead. Charlotte straightened in her seat. Her fingers clenched the armrests as if her composure had a switch she was trying not to flip. Malik didn't move. He was too busy listening to what the cabin wasn't saying. He could feel the shift in cabin pressure. The nose was dropping. Not freefall, not yet. But enough. He leaned down and looked into Noah's eyes. "You okay, champ?" Noah nodded slowly. "Why's it quiet?" Malik gave a smile, soft but worn. "Sometimes planes take a minute to think." Noah nodded, trusting him like only a child could. Then, down the aisle, movement. Fast. Focused. Tina, the lead attendant, no longer pretending this was normal. Her shoes hit the floor hard, rushing from the galley toward the front. But she didn't turn toward the cockpit. She turned toward row 17. Her eyes scanned the numbers, locked onto Malik, and stopped. Her voice wasn't gentle this time. It cut through the chaos like a blade. "Malik Carter. Seat 17A. He blinked. "Yeah. Cockpit. Now." People turned. Heads twisted. A man 2 rows back scoffed. "What's he gonna do? Tighten a bolt?" Tina didn't flinch. "He's a former C-17 instructor pilot, Air Force. Flew live missions over Syria." She looked at Malik, dead in the eye. "Both pilots are unresponsive. You're the highest qualified person on this plane." Charlotte stared, frozen. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Malik looked at his son. Noah's lips were pale. His fingers wrapped around his stuffed lion like it was a parachute. "Are you going?" Malik leaned close. "You gonna draw me a sky?" "I'll make it blue this time," Noah whispered. "Then I'll be back before you color in the sun." He stood, and the cabin watched as the man in the old bomber jacket walked toward the cockpit, not like a hero, not like a savior, but like a man who knew what falling meant, and was ready to fly anyway. The cockpit door swung open. Not wide, not dramatic, just enough to let the weight of the moment spill out. Malik stepped through. The air hit different in there, thinner, tighter, charged. It smelled of stress, sweat, and the faint metallic whisper of failing systems. Both pilots were down. The captain, mid-50s, graying at the temples, was slumped over the yoke, breathing shallow, lips tinted with the kind of blue that didn't belong on a living man. His oxygen mask hung loose, swinging gently like a clock with no time left to count. The first officer was worse. Eyes closed, unmoving. Malik moved fast. He unbuckled the captain, eased him back into the seat. Checked his pulse. Weak, but there. Oxygen system must have failed. He reached up, pulled his own mask from the emergency latch and strapped it on. The rush of air hit his lungs like truth. His hands slid across the panels. Systems blinking red. Warnings flashing. Altitude dropping faster than they should. Engines, both silent. Dead stick. No thrust. No second try. Just lift and gravity, and whatever was left between them. He didn't panic. His fingers moved like memory. Familiar. Muscle-born. This wasn't flying. This was survival dressed in switches and analog prayer. He flicked the autopilot off. The plane bucked slightly, fighting him at first, then submitting to human hands. Hands that remembered how to bring steel birds home on fumes and grit. Behind him, Tina hovered near the door, watching like a soldier who'd seen too much and still knew too little. "You sure about this?" she asked, voice tight. Malik didn't glance back. "I've landed bigger birds with worse odds." She nodded once. "You've got the cabin." He toggled the internal comms. Static. External comms. More static. Then a faint crackle. He switched frequencies. "Flight 2827, Mayday, Mayday. Both crew incapacitated. Dual engine failure. Dead stick descent. This is Malik Carter assuming emergency command." No response. He tried again. Finally, a voice, young, panicked, and unhelpful. Flight 2827, repeat? We don't have you on record as authorized. Please hold while we verify." "We don't have time to hold," Malik snapped. "I'm flying this plane manually with 153 people on board and no engines. Get me Greensboro Tower. Now." Silence. Then another voice cut in, older, sharper. "Military. This is Commander Ray Hutchins, Air National Guard. Malik Carter is verified. Give him what he needs." Malik's jaw tightened. He hadn't heard that name in 10 years. But now wasn't the time for flashbacks. Now was the time to remember what it meant to fly. Not because you were trained to, but because you were the only one left who still could. The cockpit was holding. Barely. Malik gripped the yoke with one hand, adjusting trim with the other. The plane was gliding, not falling, but there was a fine line between the two. One wrong tilt, one missed input, and they'd trade altitude for chaos. The external comms crackled again. "Flight 2827, FAA protocol requires active license validation before full clearance is granted. Without official command credentials on file, we cannot authorize emergency landing instructions. Please hold position." Malik laughed under his breath. Dry, sharp. "Hold position," he muttered. "What do they think this is? A coffee line?" He toggled the mic. "Listen carefully. This isn't about paperwork. I've got no engines, 2 unconscious pilots, and a jet full of civilians. We don't have time for forms. We have minutes before glide turns to drop." There was a pause. Another controller came on, voice cooler, but still hesitant. "Sir, we're working on identity confirmation. Until then, you're flying under visual guidance only. Stay off commercial airspace lanes and await further instruction." Malik didn't answer. His eyes scanned the gauges. Airspeed was decent. Altitude steady for now. But fuel wasn't the problem. Time was. He bit down a curse and shifted his attention to the field display. Greensboro was still over 50 miles out. He'd need every bit of lift this bird had left, and then some. Behind him, the door clicked open. Charlotte stood there, breath tight, arms crossed, not out of authority, but instinct. "I heard what they said," she said. "They don't trust you." "They don't need to," Malik replied. "I didn't take this seat to be trusted. I took it because nobody else could." Charlotte studied him for a second, then did something she never did. She opened her phone, turned on her personal line, and dialed straight into FAA headquarters. "This is Charlotte Jameson," she said into the speaker. "Yes, that's Charlotte. I'm on flight 2827, and I'm telling you now, the man flying this plane is the only reason we're not a headline yet. You want a name for your clearance file? Put mine down. And if he doesn't land us safely, you'll have a hell of a lot more than a PR crisis on your hands." She hung up. Malik glanced at her. Charlotte shrugged. Someone had to say it. He nodded once. Then turned back to the sky. Back in the cabin, the lights were dim, flickering off and on like a dying heartbeat. Passengers gripped armrests, held hands, whispered prayers. No one screamed anymore. The panic had matured into something quieter. Fear without volume. Charlotte returned to her seat slowly, her heartbeat still catching up to her spine. She glanced to her left. Noah had curled into the window, his knees tucked under his chest, stuffed lion still cradled to his chin. His tiny chest rose and fell, slow, shallow, uncertain. Something in her cracked. She wasn't a mother. She'd never even considered it. Her life had been full of boardrooms, deadlines, press releases, measured things, controllable things. But now, sitting next to this small boy with too much weight in his lungs and not enough time in his eyes, Charlotte felt something that didn't have a label. It wasn't sympathy. It was surrender. She reached out, almost hesitantly, and placed her hand over his. Noah stirred, barely opened his eyes. "Hey," she whispered. "You doing okay, kiddo?" He blinked slowly. "Is he flying?" Charlotte nodded. "He's flying. Is he scared?" She thought about that. About the look in Malik's eyes as he took the yoke. Not fear, something deeper. "No," she said softly. "He's not scared of falling. He's scared of not bringing you home." Noah smiled weakly. "That's what he always says. The hard part isn't the flight. It's the landing when someone's counting on you." Charlotte swallowed the lump rising in her throat. "He sounds like a smart guy." "He is," Noah murmured. "Even when he's tired." Charlotte leaned back, letting her eyes close for a moment. Not from exhaustion, but from a shift she didn't know she was ready for. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about investors, or liability, or control. She was thinking about Malik. The man who used to fly into war zones. Who now delivered groceries at midnight just to pay for another appointment. Who sat in row 17 with a quiet kid and a louder heart. And who, in the moment the sky forgot how to hold them, stepped up and remembered how to fly. Rain. It wasn't heavy. Not yet. Just a fine mist brushing the windshield, but Malik knew what that meant. The closer they got to Greensboro, the worse the visibility would get. Low cloud ceiling. Wet runway. No margin. He toggled the controls, double-checked trim, airspeed, glide ratio. Everything was manual now. No autopilot. No thrust. Just lift, angles and instinct. Greensboro Tower finally cut in. Flight 2827, you are cleared for final approach. Runway 23 left. Winds are light from the southeast. Precipitation increasing. Emergency crews on standby. Malik didn't respond right away. He was busy calculating weight, wind drift, the arc of descent that would buy him just enough air under the belly before touching down. He pressed the mic. Copy, tower. Confirm no other traffic on approach path. Negative. All commercial traffic rerouted. You have the sky. He glanced out the window. Gray on gray. A sky swallowed in haze. Behind him, Tina appeared again, steady even now. Cabins locked. Everyone seated. You need anything. Malik gave her a look, half gratitude, half gravity. About 2 more miles of sky and a little bit of faith. Tina managed a smile. That we've got. Charlotte sat frozen beside Noah, her hand wrapped over his, her head resting gently against his shoulder. The boy was quiet now. Too quiet. The intercom crackled once, then Malik's voice came through, calm and grounded. Folks, this is Malik Carter. You don't know me, and you weren't supposed to. But I've got this plane, and we've got 1 shot to bring her home. It'll be smooth, if we're lucky. If not, it'll still be honest. He paused. This is the kind of landing where it gets quiet. There's no engine to hum us down. Just trust. So if you pray, now's the time. If you don't, that's okay too. Just breathe. I'll do the rest. A silence filled the cabin. Not fear, not panic. A silence built from unity. From surrender. From belief. Back in the cockpit, the runway broke through the clouds, wet, narrow, closer than it should be. Malik gripped the yoke, eyes locked in, heart steady. No thrust. No power. Only memory. Only purpose. And a son waiting in seat 17A. "Let's land this bird," he whispered. And with rain tapping the glass and the ground rushing to meet them, he did. The wheels kissed the earth like a whisper. No bounce. No screech. Just a low, grounding thud that rolled through the fuselage like a sigh of relief from the metal itself. The rain was heavier now, streaking across the windshield in silver ribbons. Malik pulled back gently on the yoke, guiding the aircraft down the slick runway with nothing but gravity, willpower, and a decade-old sense of feel in his fingertips. Spoilers deployed. The plane began to slow. A sharp tug on the manual brakes, a move that would have blown the system had he not feathered it just right. The aircraft shuddered, then eased, then coasted, and finally, it stopped. Just past the 2,000-foot mark. Straight. Centered. Safe. For a moment, no one moved. No cheers. No clapping. Just silence. The kind that happens when strangers breathe as one. Malik sat back in the pilot's seat. Shoulders heavy. Eyes wet, though he'd never admit it. His hands were still on the controls, not out of habit, out of gratitude. Behind him, Tina's voice rang over the cabin intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are on the ground." The cabin exhaled. Gasps. Tears. Sobs. One by one, people clapped, not the polite kind, but the kind born from disbelief. From awe. From survival. Charlotte held Noah close, whispering into his hair. "You made it, sweetheart. Your dad did it." Noah opened his eyes slowly. He always does. Emergency lights danced outside the windows. Fire crews approached, cautious but calm. No smoke. No flames. No sirens. Just one impossible landing. Tina opened the cockpit door. Malik turned toward her, exhaustion hanging off him like a second uniform. "You good?" she asked softly. He nodded once. "Yeah. We made it." She stepped aside. They'd like to speak with the pilot. Malik looked back at the seat behind him, the one where Noah had been. Then at the door. Then at her. "Tell them," he said quietly, "I'm holding something more important right now." And when he walked down that aisle, one slow step at a time, toward the boy who held his world in one tiny chest, the cabin didn't cheer. They just watched in silence, as a father returned not as a hero, but as home. Inside the terminal, the buzz had already started. Phones pinged with headlines. Security footage. Passenger videos. Clips of the silent descent, the final glide, the miraculous landing. Unlicensed pilot saves 153 in dead-stick descent. Veteran dad lands jet after crew collapse. Flight 2827 touches down with no engines, and one heartbeat. But Malik didn't see any of it. He sat on a quiet bench near baggage claim, Noah curled against his chest, breathing steady now. His jacket draped around the boy like a blanket. In Malik's hands, a plastic cup of apple juice. Half full. Room temperature. And somehow perfect. The paramedics had checked them both. Noah would be fine, they said. Dehydrated. Stressed. But stable. Charlotte sat across from them, her hair a mess now, her blazer crumpled, her eyes red from more than rain. But she looked lighter. Like something had been pulled from her chest and left on that runway. A man in a dark suit approached. FAA badge clipped to his belt. Clipboard in hand. "Mr. Carter," he said. Malik didn't rise. Just looked up. "We'll need a full statement," the agent continued. "Your credentials are in question. There'll be an inquiry." Charlotte stood. "No," she said, voice calm but steel-lined. "There won't." The agent blinked. "Excuse me." She pulled out her phone, tapped a contact, then held it out. "That's the Secretary of Transportation." Tell her Charlotte Jameson just vouched for the man who saved my life, and 152 others. If you want to drag him through red tape, you better bring a lot of it." The agent hesitated, then stepped back, swallowing his next thought. Malik didn't thank her. He didn't have to. Later, when the cameras tried to find him, he was already gone. Out the side entrance. Into the rain. Carrying Noah in one arm, a duffel in the other. No press conference. No victory lap. Just a father going home. Somewhere above them, a jet took off, engines screaming against the sky. And down on the sidewalk, Malik looked up, not in envy, but in understanding. Because now he knew. You don't need power to fly. You just need a reason to land. 1 year later, the story was no longer trending. The headlines had faded. The interviews stopped coming. The world had moved on, like it always does. But Malik Carter? He hadn't moved back. He'd moved forward. In a small town outside Charlotte, North Carolina, tucked between an old veterans center and a public school, stood a modest one-story building. No sign out front. Just a steel hangar door that squeaked when it opened and a handmade banner above it that read, "Wings for kids who dare to try." Inside, 10 kids, black, white, Latino, boys, girls, quiet, loud, gathered around a workbench, folding paper planes, gluing together balsa wood kits, learning how lift works. Malik stood at the front, marker in hand, drawing on a whiteboard that still had scuffs from the previous class. "This is your nose," he said, pointing at the sketch. "Your plane's not gonna fly if you weigh it down too much up front. It'll dive." One kid raised his hand. "But if it doesn't have an engine, how does it stay up?" Malik smiled. "You ever love something so much it keeps you off the ground?" he asked. The kid blinked, then nodded. "That's how," Malik said. "You don't always need power. Sometimes glide is enough." Across the room, Charlotte stood by the doorway, arms crossed, watching him with a quiet kind of pride. She didn't run the place. She just helped fund it. She'd stepped down from her old CEO role, started something new, smaller, quieter, closer to the ground. Some people thought she lost everything. But she'd tell you, she finally landed. Noah now ran the check-in table. A year older, healthier, still with the same lion tucked in his backpack. He greeted every new kid with the same line. "My dad flew a plane with no engines. What do your parents do?" And when Malik heard it, he never corrected him. Because that's the thing about stories, they're not always about what happened. They're about what they meant. This wasn't a story about aviation. It was about choices. It was about showing up when it's easier to sit back. About carrying someone when you're tired. About flying even when your wings are gone. It was about remembering that some landings change more than direction. They change people. Because sometimes, the scariest thing isn't falling. It's learning to trust yourself enough to lift someone else. And sometimes, you only find your wings after the fall.